So today, it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Andrew van der Stock, the Executive Director of the OWASP Foundation. Andrew will be talking to us about what we're going to be seeing in the next 25 years for OWASP. OWASP's 25th anniversary is coming up soon, and we're looking forward to what things are going to be like. I will try not to steal his thunder and just say that much. And let me go ahead and introduce Andrew with his bio. So Andrew van der Stock is a seasoned web application security specialist and enterprise security architect. He's the executive director at OWASP, taking the foundation through organizational change and taking our mission to the next level. Andrew has worked in the IT industry for over 25 years. He has researched and developed the web application security and architecture field since 1998. He, like many of us, is a lifetime member of OWASP. If you're not, you should be. A former global board member of the board of directors, and he co-leads the OWASP Top 10 project. So you might want to talk to him about that later. Andrew is an Australian expat from Melbourne and Sydney and currently lives in the US with his family, but we won't hold that against him. Please join me in welcoming Andrew van der Stock.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that glowing introduction. I couldn't have written that better myself. Okay, I just want to reiterate, our sponsors make this possible at the price point that we've got for this conference. I am so glad to see so many of you. It's just amazing. This is the largest conference that I've addressed since 2018 in London, so give yourselves a pat on the back for being here. It's amazing. Okay. All of the above is true. I'm just going to say that in the early days of AppSec, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Very, very easy because everything was wrong. OWASP has helped. We've had an impact. And of course, I love cats. I was watching cat videos this morning during breakfast, and the server basically was interested as to why I was just watching cat video after cat video after cat video and doom scrolling cat videos. Well, you know, cats. Our vision statement is no more insecure software, and it's a big, hairy, audacious goal that will never, ever be achieved, but we've got to try, okay? So the reality is, right now, we're at an inflection point where OWASP has led the application security field for more than 20 years. How do we continue that momentum? Because we have huge momentum right now. We have more members than we've ever had. We've had more projects than we've ever had. We've had more chapters than we've ever had, and more activity than we've ever had. How do we translate that into something concrete for the next 25 years and achieve our hairy, audacious goal of no more insecure software? So our mission statement, these are almost always wordy, and you feel like they're AI generated, but they're not. They're decided by a committee over 3 days worth of arguing over every single word. To be the global open community that powers secure software through education, tools, and collaboration. One of the biggest problems for OWASP is just saying yes to everything. We can't really be a kitten shelter as well as all of this. So sometimes we have to say no, and that will hurt some folks' feelings, and that's something that's unavoidable. We do need to say no to some things, and we are doing some things today that we should be saying no to. So that's actually one of the problems with having such a large and diverse community. Like we literally just got a project a couple of months ago for top 10 drone risks. Now, that's not really truly AppSec related, and it was really hard for us to say, hey, no, that's not really for us. We sort of draw the line at applications, so we don't do infrastructure. We generally don't do OS stuff. There's other foundations that do a better job of that. So, some history. Let's go back to the very beginning. How many people in this room were alive in 1976? Yeah. So, this is the first NIST special publication. It was classified for a few years because it taught people how to hack mainframes. It's the OWASP Top 10 of 1976. Literally, the first one is the incomplete parameter validation. And when you see the very first OWASP Top 10 from 2003, you can guess what the very top item is in the OWASP Top 10 2003. And you would be correct in saying it's invalid or insufficient parameter validation. One of the interesting things is, in the days of batch mainframes with no multiprocessing whatsoever, they were thinking about asynchronous validation and inadequate serialization as being very serious problems. I don't know what data they had to back that up, but that is actually extremely forward-looking, and it's something that the OWASP Top 10 did not have until 2017. That gives you an idea about how much we absolutely need to learn from our history so we don't repeat it. How many people here have to change their password X number of days? Please tell your people to stop doing that. It doesn't work. This is where the 30-day password rotation came from. We had some very, very important people, Robert Morris and I believe Kernighan. They wrote a paper in 1979 using a PDP-11. Now, all of your mobile phones are about 1 billion times faster than that computer, especially if you look at the GPU that's built into them. And in 760 hours, they were able to crack every single password that was 6 digits long or 6 characters long of lowercase letters and digits. If you do the math, that's 31.6 days. So can you guess how the Orange Book codified this problem? You had to change your password every 30 days. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous then and it's ridiculous now. And the great thing was, they even wrote in the paper, don't do this, that's not what you need to do. Don't change your password all the time. Make it more difficult to crack the passwords. That's what they said. But unfortunately, we got saddled with this really ridiculous change your password every 30 days, every 90 days or whatever. Today, it's more of a HR issue. It shows that you've got a broken HR process, that if you need to change your password every number of X days, there's no good process to exit a staff member from the organization, and they're just protecting themselves because it will automatically happen. Okay? So that says broken HR issue needs to be fixed, not that you need to rotate your passwords. So the 2003 OWASP Top 10 unvalidated parameters were definitely the top, and then it was stayed there. And we will continue through, and you'll see that there's a theme that's running through all of these OWASP Top 10s. Basically, they don't change much until 2017, and then they change again in 2021, okay? So what this demonstrates is that over a period of time, OWASP has had an impact because the order of the things that are in the OWASP Top 10 do change. What's in the OWASP Top 10 doesn't really change. And what that, to me, says, we still haven't got through just yet. But interestingly enough, when we did the OWASP Top 10 2021, we had data for 500,000 apps. So I dare anyone to disagree that everything in the top 10 doesn't belong there. Okay, we have the data that says it belongs there. So what we suggest is the OWASP Top 10 is the minimum set of things that you need to do. But as developers, they don't want to be told what not to do. They want to be told how to do it properly and do it quickly. And that's why for 2 editions of the OWASP Top 10, I stepped away from it. Primarily because telling people what not to do when there's a universe of things that could be done much better. Like, we need to improve the quality of answers that come from AI. We need to improve the quality of answers that are on Stack Exchange. We need to improve, the examples that are in books. Snippets that come out of your IDE. We need those things to be secure by default. Okay, so that's one of the problems that we've got. But interestingly enough, in the 2021 version, injection includes cross-site scripting. And the only reason it ended up number 3 is because we did that. Individually, cross-site scripting and injection don't have enough data points to actually be in the OWASP Top 10. They would have still been in the top 20, but they would not be enough to actually be there. When we put them all together, because it is the same pattern, we got to A3. And that took us a while, a very long argument over that one. So when's the next version? 2025, we need data. If you have data, we'd love data. Please have a look at the OWASP Top 10 website and help contribute to the next version of the OWASP Top 10 2025. So the very first 25 years, we've done dramatic things. It was started by 3 people in Mark Curfew's apartment in September of 2001. It was basically a mail list for the first few months. I love the fact that their aim, without having a vision statement, without having a mission statement, was, in short, the project aims to help everyone build more secure web applications and web services. And nearly 25 years later, we're still doing that. Interestingly enough, even though the OWASP Top 10 2007 had insecure cryptographic storage and insecure transport layer security, the OWASP website itself did not enforce SSL until 2011. Way to go. That's what it looked like, a wall of text. That's the first version of the archived OWASP website, which comes from like December 2001. There's not much to really explain there, except for I'm amazed that we got as far as we did with the web design like that. I must admit, we're not web designers, and that's true today as it was in the past. The OWASP Foundation, which I head, was founded in 2004 by Jeff Williams and Dave Wickers. We live by their ethos of keeping it small. We are here to enable volunteers and volunteerism. We are not here to do the work, okay? So although the stuff that we do is very administrative and operational, like creating projects and things like that, we are not going to create your website for you. We are not going to write the developer guide. I do personally the OWASP Top 10 out of hours. That's basically the way it works. I've always done it that way. I have 6 staff and 1 contractor. They're mostly based in the US now. First appointed board was in 2007. First elected board was in 2011. And fun fact, the OWASP bylaws and its certificate of incorporation prevented both the elected board in 2011, the new bylaws in 2011 and everything like that. So it took us 3 years to fix our certificate of incorporation bylaws. So for those folks deeply into governance, find me and have a chat about it, because it's a fun story. So our community was 2001 to 2019 was listmen mail lists. I am the person responsible for killing them off. We had a security vulnerability reported to us that was essentially RCE, and so instead of trying to fix Mailman one last time, I just said, it's in the Wayback Machine, we're done, shut it down. So it's gone. RIP Listman. In 2019, the active listman groups got ported to Google Groups, and so there's still active Google Groups, but as folks my age and older age out, email is becoming less and less prevalent as the primary method of communicating. Since 2015, we've had Slack, and it's now our largest community. We've got 26,000 people on it, and it's our largest single bill now. Our members, our first members were in 2006. Realistically, for a membership non-stock corporation, which we are, we should have had members in 2004. And if I was Mark Curfew in 2001, I would have started the organisation, the foundation first, and then created membership straight away. That didn't happen, and so we've got some real anomalies. Leaders, up until March, did not need to be members. That's just crazy talk. When the lawyers heard about this, when we were doing the bylaws, they're just going, you what? So the reality is if you're an OWASP chapter leader, project leader, event leader, you need to be a member. The reason for that is legal. People who can set the strategy, access finances, become board members and things like that need to be members of the membership non-stock organisation. So it's mandatory. It's not like I want you to become a member to boost these numbers. The numbers are fantastic as they are. And so we offer complimentary membership as well as paid membership for leaders. So we're not after money, we're after you being a member, okay? So the first chapters, these are the first chapters. They started in August of 2004. Some of them are still going today. I started the Sydney chapter while not living there. That is not policy compliant now. So if you're interested in starting a chapter, you cannot start a chapter in, say, for example, that city over there and run a chapter over here. And you'd be surprised the number of people who want to do that. We actually have one gentleman who wants to run a chapter from a different country. It's always fun explaining the rules to him. And we do that to make sure that we have active chapters. We don't want people to have a resume filler saying, I'm a chapter leader, and then not hold meetings because they're never there. Okay? We now have 279 chapters all over the world. And what we don't see is a lot of chapters in Africa, and that's something we need to fix. To be a global organisation, we need to be everywhere. Okay? Also, we're missing out on a fair number of chapters in the Asia-Pacific region. In particular, we'll come back to this in a future slide, but things like Ho Chi Minh City, one of the largest cities in the world, does not have a chapter. And so we need to fix that. What is the issue? And I think it's probably translations and the ability for folks to consume our materials in that country. First projects were the testing framework, which became the developer guide, attack components, web sleuth, and XML data guide exchange. They, for the most part, don't exist anymore. The developer guide 1.0 came out in 2002. This is what we got famous for. Almost all of the hits for OWASP became part of this particular project, and I led it for a while. It released version 4.0 back in May, so it's still going. It's fantastic. The testing framework eventually morphed into the web testing framework and the web testing guide that we have at the moment, and that's an amazing resource as well. The attack components, if you like, could be considered like the cheat sheets of today. OWASP Top 10 1.0 came out in January 2003. Most people don't even know it existed. The first version that was really popular was in 2004. We now have 345 projects, and this is where we need to be a bit cautious because many of them are completely inactive, and we need to do something about cleaning them up and getting them new volunteers. So if you are interested in becoming a volunteer, please touch base with us. Our first events were in AppSec New York in 2004, which of course was held in New Jersey. Our first EU one was in April 2005, and my first AppSec was actually in AppSec Research in Leuven in Belgium. And that was fantastic. We got a tour of the Stella factory and everything. We now have over 100 events globally, all around the year. Some of our bigger events are there. And do you know what, John? I have left AppSec New Zealand off this. But John and I are going to negotiate out. We're going to go to the mat tomorrow about negotiating global AppSec New Zealand for 2025, and it will happen. So looking forward to that. So we are going to be 25 in 2026. What do we need to do between now and then that will move the needle? We need to agile all the things. We've got projects that are stuck in the waterfall and on-prem. They just are. They sort of assume that the deployment of the application doesn't have anything to do with cloud, software as a service, low code, no code. Most of them are completely absent of any controls or any information that will help. We need to fix that. We need projects to be directly consumable by developers. And what that means is that we need the way that developers work. How many people here are developers? Fantastic. How many times would you like AppSec professionals come to you and say, here, have this tool that sits to the side that I'm going to make you use for 10 hours a week? Okay, good. No one really wanted that. We really need to get inside developers' tools and make it as transparent and easy as possible to do the right thing, not the other way around. And of course, we need to align with current development practices such as CI/CD. We do have a few tools that do, but we don't have enough. Developer outreach. We need to speak at developer conferences. We need to train at developer conferences, and we need to booth at developer conferences. If we go to RSA, Black Hat, and DEF CON, everybody knows your name there, and realistically, we're not going to convert anybody. So our goal is to actually speak to the people who may never have heard of the OWASP Top 10. There are so many people at developer conferences who graduated 5, 10, 15 years ago, never did one single module of application security. And we need to reach those people because they're going to become senior leads soon. And if they're senior leads and they don't know about security, well, it doesn't get done. We need an academic basis for our field. We don't want to repeat the 30-day password mistake. There are so many things in our field where it's like hand-wavy. You will do it this way because we say so. No, we need proof that it works and that it's effective. We need an open tertiary curriculum and syllabus because there are places all over the world that need and crying out for a deep understanding of web application security. And at the very least, a single semester-long module for everybody to go through who does software engineering or computer science. The idea of like having an engineer coming out of an engineering course who doesn't know about environmental factors or load bearing or whatever, that does not occur. That people can graduate software engineering and computer science without learning a single module about application security. We need to fix that. Of course, we need to fix the industry curriculum, and we need open textbooks. How many people are students here? How many people think that the textbooks are way too expensive? Yeah. We need open textbooks so that you can actually just pull it up on your iPad on your computer and get the information you need. It's just not going to be in like Wikipedia or something like that. We need chapters in every large city. There are so many cities that have more than 1 million inhabitants that do not have an active chapter. Chicago is probably the worst example because we used to have an active chapter there. But we have some that have never had a chapter, and we need volunteers. And so if you're interested and you come, anyone from Wellington here? You're going to be the next chapter lead. We want larger events. We need, our primary fundraising mechanism is events, and in many organisations that are non-profit, we would hold events to, $1,000 a plate. No, we want events like this that advance our mission, that actually teach people stuff, but also provide funding for the organisation to do more. We really want to get beyond the 2,000 attendee limit. Our largest ever AppSec recently was Lisbon with 1,100 people, which was fantastic. We need to modernise the CFP and CFT process. It is too difficult to actually submit papers and manage your paper and getting reviews. If you're interested in reviewing papers, we need volunteers like yesterday. There are just so many papers and events that need help. So we're going to change our process to be on sessionized, which will allow us to actually manage events a lot better than we do today. Corporate supporters. How many people here work at a bank? Not a single bank in the entire world, there's 22,000 of them, has decided to fund and support OWASP. And all of them, without a single one of them being an exception, use our stuff. We need to change this conversation. What is it that banks need that we don't do today that would get them to come on board? And same with large organisations with a development function. There are just so many places that build software that you don't realise build software. I went to one very, very large media conglomerate, and they have an amazing number of developers, and you just think, well, these people have like newsprint and TV channels and things like that, and they have hundreds of developers, and it's really important that we actually get those folks on board. And of course, fintech startups. It's really tight on money in the first couple of months of any startup, but again, many fintechs rely heavily upon OWASP. So I'd love to see, once you get funded properly, for startups to actually come on board. The next 25 years, a call to action. Something that you're not going to like. The future is AI. And I actually used AI to generate every single image in this presentation. Bing Create is actually quite amazing. I asked for a cute kiwi and a black background, and I got 2 kiwis. Not everything is a kiwi. You can't outsource responsibility to an AI. They make dumb decisions. At the moment, OWASP.com, which is the organizational email, is blocked by Microsoft's AI spam filter. It learned something about our emails and decided that every single tenant on Office 365, everybody who uses Microsoft Defender, an exchange doesn't need to receive OWASP.com emails, and they can't even see them. There's nothing in the quarantine folders, there's nothing, it's just being blocked. So dealing with lawyers is like one of the things I have to do. They all use the Microsoft Office platform. I basically have to ring them up and say, can you get your techs to release this from your quarantine? And then they have to go into the spam folder and then mark it as not junk. It's very painful. So you cannot outsource responsibility to AI. There's still going to be a place for humans, but it won't be what you expect. OWASP is you. It's volunteerism at its core. It's our culture, okay? The first few years of OWASP, there was no money. The very first conferences were funded through Aspect Security, which was one of the very first sponsors of OWASP, just donating money to get a conference off the ground. And through that, we are where we are today. Volunteerism is at the very heart of everything we do. And it is not what we can do for you. It's really, please help us. We've got a huge mission to do. We need to be a bit fine-tuning it, but the reality is, without volunteers, we are nothing. So, become a member. There are student memberships from $8 up. I believe the first world or developed nations fee is actually just $20. So, $50 for a normal person. There are so many students here, and I love the fact that you're actually here, because you're the next generation of AppSec professionals. We need to inculcate AppSec at a deep level in every student. And so if you can spread the word, get them to come to OWASP chapter meetings, start a student chapter. That's something you can do, is you can have a student chapter in a city that's already got a chapter that meets on campus. This is actually something that's really, really cool. So we need to attract the best and brightest to our field and make sure that we're passing along our institutional knowledge to the next generation. Okay? In some ways, we're like an old-fashioned guild. We don't have a proper professional organization that certifies everybody yet. And so the reality is that we need to do this informally for the time being. We need certification because you'd be surprised at the number of governments that are busy passing certification laws that, to do this particular field, you must be certified. Well, I'm not going to name names, but there are certain organizations that do certifications at the moment that have a very low reputation. I think OWASP's reputation is much higher, and we should be doing certification and having an income stream from that. And so we're going to look into it. There's so much stuff that needs to be done. Framework security in particular. One of the things that makes the most difference to the security of applications is using a modern framework that has security in the box. Cross-site scripting has basically become almost irrelevant because, well, React, AngularJS, those frameworks make it very hard to shoot yourself in the foot. You can still do it, it's just, if you're doing it the way they want you to do it, so that you get speed through the Shadow DOM and stuff like that, you won't do it because the best way is the proper way, and it has no cross-site scripting. And so framework security is one of those areas that we really need to work on. There are some languages, that, like PHP, that do have frameworks, that their frameworks could be improved, for example. We need architecture. How many people here used to work as an enterprise architect? One or two, okay. Enterprise architecture was basically phased out of most organizations for no good reason. It was part of the agile fad that you don't need it, when in fact you absolutely do need it. And architecture is one of those things, if you can spend a little bit of time up front designing your application correctly, you can create use cases and testable security functions that save hundreds of hours. For example, password resets. Having questions and answers is about 2,000 to 3,000 lines of code. And you should not have it at all. It should not exist. So the password reset function with questions and answers like what's your mother's maiden name, not only is it really dumb, you can save your developers hundreds of hours of not coding that stuff. Architecture pays off time and time and time again. And we need architecture projects at OWASP, and we don't have them. We need agile security. We need to be able to have more projects, more documentation that actually deals with the agile process, because it is what is taught in universities at the moment. It is what is practiced in whatever form, wagile, whatever you want to call it, at organizations. For us to ignore agile security in the way that we're doing at the moment is not okay. We need to fix that. And we really need to bring our developers into the fold. Realistically, there are 1 or 2 AppSec professionals for every 100 developers, and that's not a good ratio. And so we need at least, I would say, 20 developers who are security aware to know where their limits are. Like most general contractors and builders will know when it's time to go to an engineer and get the actual answer that they need. And then other times they just know this will work, and they just go ahead and do it. So we want you to volunteer for projects. There are heaps and heaps of projects. There's going to be something that actually scratches your itch. But just in case I've said something that's triggered something in you and you feel like you want to actually start a project, it's very simple. In fact, it's too simple because we get so many projects that don't go anywhere. What I would suggest is find 2 or 3 people who are like-minded, who can help you stay sustained and keep the momentum going. One of the first things I did when I took over the OWASP Top 10 again is I actually appointed 3 co-leaders. And I did that for a very specific reason. I have a very poor history of completing projects on my own. I am that guy in the group project. So I'm happy to drive things forward, but I really need people to drive me forward as well. And that's why we ask that you have at least 2 leaders for every chapter, 2 leaders for every project. We really need funding for the next level, and we want to get to a place where we could have like residencies for OWASP projects. We want to have a situation where someone wants to do something like the next version of CRS or the next version of SAM, and they just need 3 or 4 months off work and still pay their bills. We can't do that today. We can give people, money to go travel to a conference or a project summit, same as the diversity funding that John's got for this conference. We do that, but it's not enough. We would love to be able to do more. And so on Giving Tuesday, December 3, we're asking corporate members to reach into their pockets and actually do matching donations, and also to donate. We'd ask you to donate as well. And we'd also like to have more corporate supporters. How many people go to the OWASP chapter? That's a very low number. There are OWASP chapters in most places in New Zealand. I would recommend having a look. Go to find a local chapter and it will be there. And so, when does it meet next?
Auckland and Hamilton are the 3rd Tuesday of this month.
Okay, 3rd Tuesday of this month. Make a note of it and go to it. These are great events. If you have something to say at a chapter, the chapter leads are always looking for speakers. Yeah, so if you have something interesting about AppSec that you've done in your job, or you've learnt something and you think other people, even a 5 or 10 or 20-minute presentation is better than nothing, okay? So do volunteer to speak at your chapter. You'd be surprised at how that actually improves your ability to lead at work and become a better presenter, and actually then, you might be the next Jim Manico or Tanya Janka or John. You can start a chapter. So Wellington peeps, hello. It's very simple. Yeah. Just go to the chapters, start a local chapter. It takes about 10 minutes. You just need to nominate somebody else to be a co-leader, and it's so simple. Finding local speakers, we actually have a speakers bureau which provides leads on speakers that you can get virtually to come into your meeting and present whilst you're still finding locals to come and talk to you. And of course, go to events such as this. Our next big event is actually Global AppSec San Francisco in the end of September. I really would love to see you there. I'll be there. We have still yet to work out where we're going for AppSec EU. I am hoping it's Barcelona. That'll be an amazing place to go. I've never been to Spain before. We are still working it out. It could also be Frankfurt. It might be... It's one of those fun things. Organising events takes a long time. And one more thing. I'm a little bit early, but that's okay. I'm moving to New Zealand. No. I'm moving back to Australia. Yeah, sorry about the sheep joke. Couldn't help myself. It's a friendly rivalry. No, at the end of November, I'm heading back to Melbourne. And so anybody here from Australia? Okay, that's surprisingly low number. Next year, we're going to be advertising to Australians, so be prepared for more Australians in the actual audience next year. Hopefully, we'll be able to break attendance records for this event. And yeah, I hope to be here next year as well.
Don't forget Singapore, 4 weeks.
Yeah, Singapore. Singapore is happening. So anybody from Singapore? Yeah, okay. Just in case you happen to be in Singapore in 4 weeks' time, we have a fantastic event coming up there. It's just a day and a bit. So I know it's a bit far to travel for just that little amount of time, but it's at the Marina Bay Sands. I think that'll be amazing. So thank you so much for being at my keynote. I'm available that way. I get hundreds of DMs a week, and I am really bad at replying to them. So if you've got something important to let me know about, please email me. I am of the generation of emails, so please think about that. With that, John, I'm going to hand back. If there's time for burn, I'm happy to do questions.
All right. Before we usher Andrew off the stage, we do have some time for questions. We were worried that he was going to run long, and instead we're ending a bit early. So do you have any questions for Andrew? And Noah's going to run around.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you. This was really, I love looking back at the past as well as looking forward, so thank you for that. One of the things that I found with OWASP projects is often the people who have the time to volunteer are from larger organizations. And so the design patterns and tools that come out suit larger environments that perhaps have more than the average number of AppSec folk per developer. What guidance do you have, or what thoughts do you have on scaling some of the AppSec guidance to work for organizations and dev teams of every size?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the problems that we have with the OWASP Top 10 is just making recommendations that will suit both the individual hobbyist as all the way up to an enterprise team. And we're very cognizant of on the OWASP Top 10 project. In ASVS, we made it very clear that we weren't mandating that you need an application security team of 5 people or whatever, because that's just not the way it works. But you're right, there are plenty of projects like the Kubernetes Top 10 that sort of assumes they've got this massive Kubernetes infrastructure and team behind it. It would be really nice to be able to say, hey, dear Kubernetes Top 10, can you please make it more scalable for the teams that are going to be doing this? But, the large language models folks, for example, they've got universal principles. So it really depends on project to project. And I think maybe this is where the project committee could actually step in and provide guidance in a project handbook. I think one of the things that we're going to be doing soon is we've got this new platform based around edX called Blended. And we're going to do leadership training. And to do that, we need to understand what we want to train on. And I think that's a very valid point.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
All right. Anyone got questions? One over there.
Sorry, hello. Thank you for the great presentation. It was amazing. But one question I did want to ask is you said that one area that OWASP is looking to go forward in the future is things like banks and fintech and stuff like that. But I'm just thinking, are there any, I know that's going to be the main goal, but are there any other industries that OWASP is looking to expanding out? I think things like education and local government in particular and securing their systems would be really good. Is that something that the OWASP project is looking at?
Yeah, so the one that bothers me the most is health.
Okay. Yeah.
Because privacy is a big deal. And with, you know, there's a new piece of legislation coming out of Europe about devices being maintainable. And that'll affect medical devices as well as everything else. And you'd be surprised the number of times you go and see an MRI and the machine running it's running Windows XP. And no one's patching it because the vendor said, don't touch that. You know, the reality is that health bothers me a lot. There is also communities that are difficult to reach, like defence. They really need our help, but it's very hard for them to talk to us. It's a one-way conversation, and we don't know what they need. So maybe having a defence community that can talk together, that can consume our materials, but is opaque from the outside, I don't know. I don't know how to address that particular issue, but yes, local government, most of the time local government consumes other people's stuff, so I would like to see SBOMs become mandatory so they can help manage the stuff. We've got Cyclone DX, which is a global standard. It's now standardized by ECMA. I'd love to see SBOMs being available to everybody so they can manage their risk.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problems. Any other questions?
Down there. No one gets this exercise for the day.
Yep.
Hand up again.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate the talk. One thing I was curious about, you had that discussion about projects and specifically architecture.
Yes.
What did you have in mind there?
Agile architecture. Essentially, what can you do every sprint? What can you do per planning sprint that would move the needle to make it easier to actually build just what you need and have an idea of where you're going? Like, what are you going to integrate with? How are you going to actually test it? And what needs testing? One of the biggest problems we've got at the moment is access control. Sometimes people just assume that I can see my profile, but no one wrote the rule that says I shouldn't be able to see anyone else's profile, or you shouldn't be able to update anyone else's profile. It's really important that enterprise architecture exists. An application architecture exists, but it needs to be done in an agile way. Almost all of the architecture, software architecture books are very waterfall, and they actually assume that you're going to spend 2/3 of your project timeline on architecture, and then the coders can go away and build it and test it in the last third. That's not the way it works. We need to have a modern approach to architecture.
Thank you for your presentation today. So, for large organizations, security becomes a higher priority, but for small organizations and startups, companies on a budget, security ends up becoming a second-class citizen. So, taking into account that probably the top 10 list from OWASP is the most common thing known in the community, for low-budget organizations, what would be the thing, the project, the framework, the tool that you would recommend that would be the most bang for buck? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I would recommend them using the Application Security Verification Standard, level 1, fork it, and then eliminate everything that they don't need. And so it brings it down to, say, 20 or 30 controls. And that would be my minimum baseline. If they did the OWASP top 10, that's a great start, but it's not perfect. Okay? Starting with the ASVS, level 1 is a much better start because it tells you what to do and how to test it. And it's a lot more straightforward. The OWASP top 10 just gives you like access to the CWE that says, category 79, SQL injection. Well, how do you fix that? In ASVS, it tells you exactly how to fix it. Like, don't do this. Use an ORM, use prepared statements, whatever the case may be. So the reality is that for small organizations, have you seen the cornucopia cards? Yeah, that's a great way to do threat modeling on the cheap. I love the cornucopia cards. Play the cornucopia game and flesh out what the problems are in your application by playing the cornucopia game and then making sure that there are user stories. It's not only fun to do, it's actually, it links to the ASPS, which is fantastic. Oh, one over there.
It's over there.
Definitely getting your workout today.
And there.
Thanks for the presentation. I notice you mention SBOMs, and I assume you're mentioning software bill of materials.
Yeah.
So I have heard that it can be quite difficult to itemize your dependencies sometimes. And I was curious what your recommendations sort of on how you itemize that and frameworks to manage making those, since it can be quite long and quite involved, and you may have unexpected dependencies.
Yeah, so there is a dependency track project that actually helps create the SBOMs and track them. So if you've got artifacts that you need to create and you're a large organization, there are commercial products that produce Cyclone DX SBOMs directly. The problem is that there are just so many vulnerable components out there, and then identifying the exact one, because sometimes they bring in 3 or 4 copies of an older library inside their jar file or their node modules or whatever the case may be, but they never use that code. And yet the SBOM will say, well, it's got this old piece of crap. Yeah, you're absolutely right. SBOM it's not in its infancy because it has been standardized, but it is very difficult to get a reliable SBOM that actually talks about where the code is going and what will actually be executed. And I think it's really incumbent upon vulnerable libraries to keep their stuff updated, but it doesn't happen. You know, there's an XKCD cartoon that actually shows, you know, the world's software relies upon this one person in Finland or whatever in their mum's basement. The reality is that is actually the truth. So often it's not funny, and we need to be cognizant of that and actually, you know, be a bit forgiving about it as well.
Thank you very much.
No problems.
Any other hands?
No worries. Well, I volunteered by being in a blue shirt today. I will be pointing you at the actual blue shirts. Oh, okay, one more question.
Hi. I guess the problem is a lot of software developers are not security specialists and they don't know what they don't know. So, I mean, how do you sort of bootstrap people in making secure things? I mean, do we sort of need better templates for things, better, I don't know, maybe in the AI area, sort of things that suggest building things in a secure way to start with?
Yeah. So we need to get in the tools. So they have snippets, they have suggestions, Copilot, you name it. There's a whole bunch of things that suggest stuff to the developers. We need to get in there and become in front of the developers, and so they can start to learn more. At the moment, we're not there. So I'd love to see like a Visual Studio Code plugin that actually provides suggestions for, I want to create a data object or something like that, and it automatically presents to you something that's pretty good, that actually based around OWASP, and it mentions OWASP maybe a few times in the comments. That'd be amazing to me, and that's where we need to go, because we can't rely upon corporations and smaller organizations to come to events like this. But it's also part of the reason why we need to send people out and do training, be at developer conferences and be in the booths so that we can actually spread the word.
Thank you very much.
Any last questions? Right there. And there's another hand over
Hey, Andrew, thank you. Looking at what I'm hearing at the moment, OWASP has a heavy focus on the developers and getting things right from the start. From a quality perspective for us testers in the room, how do we get more involved in finding the issues? I mean, I'm talking with the lovely Laura over there from SafeStack about how we improve that, but from an OWASP perspective, what are you guys doing to, I guess, push the learning for quality engineers?
Okay, so the application security verification standard and its fellow castmates all have verification that can be done in unit testing, integration testing, and end-to-end testing. And it's written as a verification, so it's not really directly consumable by developers, it's actually directly consumable by QA folks. So look at the ASVS and its fellow bedmates, like the MASVS for mobile apps. Additionally, the testing guide, the web testing guide, the mobile testing guide actually has a lot of things about how to test things programmatically. It's not perfect because it sometimes assumes you're going to be using a pen testing tool, which is not ideal. I'd prefer it if you were just, like if you're using Postman, let's do a Postman thing. If we're doing something in your end-to-end framework, let's do something in your end-to-end framework rather than rely upon some external third-party tool that you've got no idea about. Most of the tools are actually really easy to use, it's just you shouldn't need one.
Yeah, we're trying to do a focus on what I call a risk-based approach to testing. So we do the risk analysis up front and then we figure out where we want to spend our time. So it's getting QAs across the idea of what risks do we need to be looking for in the first place. Access control flaws are business logic flaws. They're impossible to find any other way than actually thinking about how could I misuse this. Like in Australia, we actually have this private health insurance scheme that you must be enrolled as an adult, otherwise your taxes go up. What the government didn't realise when they actually made the scheme is that people would get multiple tax deductions from having multiple health insurance schemes. And that made no sense to anybody except for the people who did it, who got huge tax write-offs for 1 year until they made the business rules different. You need to think evil about the business rules. So when I'm doing pen testing, which I don't do these days, or source code reviews, I look at access control and business logic flaws like at least a third of the time that I'm actually doing a review. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Okay.
Wait for the mic. All right, thank you everyone for listening, and let's have one last round of applause for Andrew.
Fantastic.
And I get to give someone a speaker gift, a small token of our appreciation. If you find it on eBay, bid high, because they're really quite valuable. But thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us.
No worries. Again, thank you.
It's great to have you here. Ask him lots of questions. He'll be here all day.
Yeah. Blue shirt means volunteer.
Yes.
No, not those volunteers. I will, any real volunteer questions, I will pass them on to the actual volunteers, but I'm here to actually answer your questions.
And we're exactly at the time we're supposed to end, so that worked very well.